Ladies and gentlemen, today we're going to talk about opening doors for others. Very important thing that we can do in life. John Andrew Holman said, "There's no experience better for the heart than reach down and lifting people up." Think about that. The people with real power, the people who have influence, the people who get things done are usually the people behind the scenes. They don't pound their chest. They don't constantly proclaim their accomplishments. This is my next guest story. My guest today is my friend, John Spike Garcia. John served in the Air Force and in the Army Texas National Guard. Now, Spike is always ready and willing to put people in the best possible position to succeed. Spike is one of those people, he doesn't say, "Call me if you need me." He's there before the call. This is a man you need to know. Spike is also a contributing author to the #1 best-selling book, Business Secrets from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. This book is stories by veterans, by spouses, children, and parents and supporters of veterans. You can order the book on Amazon. Today, it's available. So, Spike, welcome to Life Altering Events.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here and appreciate the opportunity.
Spike, you were one of the authors in the book, one of the contributing authors. Tell the audience a little bit about where you were born and then what reason, why did you go into the Army at such a young age?
Well, I was born in Jacksonville, Texas, just outside of Tyler. It's north part of Texas, and moved to Houston shortly, after I was 2. And when I was growing up, I was extremely shy, believe that or not. I was extremely shy growing up, through school, middle school, high school. But the one thing I saw was I would watch these War II movies, and the bond I saw among the soldiers, when being depicted is something that I wanted to be part of. It was something bigger than yourself. Mm-hmm. It was something that was not only that you took care of those next to you, but you're serving your country. And to me, I looked at it and said, what better way than that you can give back than serving your country? And that's what led me to join the Army.
The Army, you were deployed to Iraq, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, this is what impressed me as I was reading your story. You do your assigned duty, whatever you were supposed to do, and then you volunteered at the hospital. Share that experience with us. What was that like?
Well, after my 3 years active duty Army, then I switched to the Texas Air National Guard, basically the U.S. Air Force, a component of the U.S. Air Force. And when I went to Iraq, went twice in 2005 and 2007 in support of Operation Rocket Freedom. Our job, we went as an F-16 package. Our job was to make sure that the jets were built all of the assigned sorties, missions that they had, and provide air support for the troops on the ground, close air support, CAS missions. And that was a rolling 24/7 event. So as a scheduler, as the non-commissioned officer in charge of the scheduling shop, I ensured that those jets, the pilots were assigned to the jets in a 24/7 schedule, they were doing that. After my 12 to 14-hour shift, I didn't feel that I had done enough. So what I did was, it's the Air Force Theater Hospital in Balad, Iraq. Wounded from the battlefield were being flown in. I'm talking about they were coming out of the battlefield, being loaded into Chinooks or Blackhawks and flown to us. And the way that it was structured at the time, they were very dependent on volunteers to help them at the hospital. Now, obviously, they had doctors, they had medical technicians, there were staff, but they still needed a group of volunteers to help with other things. So we were trained to bring out the natal gurney, unload the litters, which is what they call when they're unloading the wounded out of their helicopter, know the approach to the helicopter, because the helicopters never turned off the rotors from the Black Hawk or from the Chinook. And because my work shift was, from morning to evening. When I was there, it was at night, and you just had a few lights on the ground. To be able to do that, secure them in the natal gurney, bring them into the ER. And at the time, the hospital only was 32 tents put together. The walls were plywood with a bed sheet that they would have a string with a bed sheet as basically your door. When I sat in the surgeries, it was the flooring was matting like you would have at a during yoga or something like that, and you can literally reach over and touch both patients if you have two patients there at the same time.
Wow.
So for me was to what I heard was that if you volunteered at the Air Force Theater Hospital, it would change your life. It would give you a whole different perspective, and it did. Seeing the wounded coming in, and not only the ER but also sitting in surgeries, and then the majority of my time was in the ICU. So I would take the vitals of service members that were there. Different things that I have one Iraqi major who was fighting on our side that, he had stepped on an IED and he actually lived, but he swelled up by approximately 60 pounds. His whole body did. And he had two lower extremities as far as his legs. They had the pins in there. And so we had to give him baths and we had to turn him. And it was as much as we're trying to be easy, it was extremely painful for him, but he never complained. We'll apologize about, how painful it was. And he was like, no, continue doing what you do. So it was a life-changing experience.
It certainly is. I was a medic in the Air Force at the end of the Vietnam War, and it does change you when you see the impacts on war. One of the things that you wrote in your chapter, Spike, which impressed me, was sometimes you would just sit and talk. And
Yes.
How important was that?
That was it was an outlet because it was the first time that most of the soldiers had been able to talk about the experience they had went through. We had one, this kid could have been 19, 20 years old. And he had survivor's guilt. He talked about how a Black Hawk came in to rescue them because they're being attacked, and he was shot, and his lieutenant exited the helicopter to get him. And just as he was getting back to the helicopter, his lieutenant was shot and killed. Both were evacuated out. But for him, that's going to be that was the very first step of his grieving process, of him starting to share that and get that off his chest, which I think was very important. Not every story was like that, but that's something that I still remember till today.
Right, and that'll stay with you forever. When I was as a medic, the psychiatrist would always tell us, get them to talk.
Right.
I don't care what they talk about, get them to talk. And then in the hospital, there was a buzzer we could push, and the psychiatrist would sneak in the back of the room. Didn't say anything. We just wanted to hear what was happening. And they used to stress that it's so important to let them talk and let them get that out there. So critical. I would thank you so much for doing that as a volunteer. Now, you had a story, Spike, that my staff read it, and they almost burst out into tears. You're in East Berlin. You go over you go to Checkpoint Charlie. Tell that story. What happened on that bridge?
So this was back in 1986. I was about to end my 3-year tour in the Army, and there are things I wanted to see. I read in textbooks, but I wanted to see for myself. And one of them was I wanted to go to East Berlin. And in order to do that, and you have to be in your full service dress uniform, my Army uniform. I had a form that was written in English and in Russian because we didn't recognize the German Democratic Republic. Because I took the duty train from West Germany through East Germany into West Berlin, and then at Checkpoint Charlie, I had very strict rules. I had to wear the uniform. I had to bring that form, go through Checkpoint Charlie, and when I walked in, however you made your way into, either if you walked across or if you took a train across, you had to come out the same way, and you had to be out by midnight that night. I ended up spending eight different days, 8 continuous days over there, and I had all access to the city of Berlin. That's the one thing that pass allowed me to do. And so I didn't go venture into the main part of Berlin. I wanted to see all of East Berlin. And so I was walking through, the back area, so to speak, the non-populated, or not as populated, I should say, into those areas. And when I was, I found myself walking a bridge, and I could tell you, I remember as if it happened yesterday, and this happened in 1986. I was on the left side of the bridge, and I saw there was only one other person, and he was on the same side as me, approaching me. Elderly gentleman. He had a very long beard, walked very slow with a cane. And as I was approaching him, I noticed the Star of David on his jacket, and I didn't know what to expect, and whenever we got close, he stopped and he saluted, and I did too. And that was very impactful for a young kid. But what I understood was that he wasn't necessarily saluting me, but he was saluting the uniform and what it represented as far as the Americans that came in and liberated Germany, and in essence, those who were in concentration camps. And that's something that, I will always recall, because it was very powerful at a very young age for me to understand that it's something definitely bigger than myself.
It absolutely is. And those kind of meetings just strike home as to what you did, what the United States military, the United States did to help these people. And you just don't realize it when you're in the action. But then when somebody comes up and says, salute you like that, or I was in France one time and they said, you American military, and he says, everything is free because I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you. And it makes you realize that they appreciate it. They appreciate what we did. That's amazing. My whole staff was crying when they read that story. It was so touching.
I have too. When I think about that, it hits me the same way still.
It's incredible. One of the things you talk about, Spike, is that combat changes you forever. It just does. Now, you were getting ready to go home, right? And a chaplain said something to you that had a big impact that you share with a lot of people now. What did the chaplain tell you?
Well, he was actually from my unit and went over, Chaplain Prater. He's still here in Texas. And he's somebody I had gained to, have a lot of respect for. But I've had a lot of briefings. Those of us who deployed, et cetera, you get a lot of briefings. And some of it feels like it's a check mark, just fill in a box. Because you're like, I don't know how this is going to help me. But his was when I feel the first time that this is value added. This is something that I can understand. And it's always back to the basics. That's the one thing I have to say is it may not sound that profound, but it is. And he shared with us about, he said, each of us have our own experiences while we've been in Iraq, whatever that may be, whatever our job has required, the things that we've seen, there could be 1,000 people in that room and you're going to have 1,000 different experiences. and they're very impactful to each of you. And you have seen, the difference from when you arrive to when you're leaving, how this may have impacted your life, changed you, etc. Because so when you go home, that is no different from those who are home. So the day you left and the day you return, for those who are home, your spouse, your children, your family, extended family, your friends, especially your immediate family, they have gone through a lot while you've been overseas. Now, obviously, it is not the same as far as it's not a battlefield. They're not in Iraq, but they're dealing with things that they may not have to dealt with before. As far as the uncertainty, the things that happen, something that breaks around the house, maybe there's an issue with the vehicle that needs to go to the shop, getting kids to where they need to be. All these life things that happen to them and the stresses that they deal with, they've also had to deal with that. So don't expect that everything's going to revert back to day one when you're left, because they've had their experience as well. And for you to understand and realize that, yes, it may not be the same with what you experienced, but they've also had their experiences. And that will help with that transition back and getting you back into the schedule, into their daily lives, because they've had to adjust without you being there. And so always keep that in mind. That was, even though it may not sound profound, it is. It really is. And it makes a difference to help you make the transition to their life as well, as they're doing the same with you.
That's right. Both sides are going to have to adjust, and they have a schedule. They have a way of doing things. Now,
right,
you need to fit into that and
correct,
immerse yourself slowly. Very important. That's wonderful. Now, Spike, most veterans, when they get out, they tend to try to find a job similar to what they had in the military, because it's what they know.
Right.
You didn't do that. Tell us what you did, and tell us about what's behind you there.
So initially, what I did was I went to oil and gas and became a project manager. That was something that I always wanted to do, being in Texas, being in Houston. So I did that for 5 years. And then in 2017 is whenever we had the oil that just bottomed out. And so, there's massive layoffs. And at that time, that's whenever my wife said, you need to find a veteran service organization to work for. She goes, because the happiest I see you is when you come home from volunteering for veterans. She goes, that is what makes you happy. And so that's whenever I really started looking into looking for a VSO, Veteran Service Organization, to work for. And I was very fortunate. At the time, we were known as Lone Survivor Foundation, which we did a rebranding recently. So it's Operation Red Wings Foundation, and we're honoring the 19 who were killed on the mission. But they came in and they asked me, actually, I was brought in to be interviewed for the Director of Donor Relations, basically a development officer. Mm-hmm. And they had to do, and the reason was because the person who was interviewing me at the time knew my contacts, knew the outreach I had not only within the local community, but within Texas and in some parts of outside throughout the U.S. So that covered not only veterans and veterans groups, also at the state, local, national, but also with Fortune 500 companies, especially oil and gas, because a lot of those has veteran networks, U.S. congressmen, in just leaders within the community. And so that's I went in and interviewed, and a month later I started, and actually August will be my 5-year anniversary with the organization. And I have now I am living my purpose in life. And whenever I made the announcement that I got selected, I got so the outpouring of support from my friends and family was amazing, because they were saying, this is where you need to be. Because I was volunteering maybe as many as 20 hours a week with a full-time day job. It was just, it's continuous. There isn't a week I have off. When I say off, I mean, there isn't a week that goes by that I don't do some type of volunteer work within the veteran space. And so I just imagine, I said, what kind of impact could I make if I actually had that as my day job? And now I'm very blessed, because my volunteer work intersects with my day job. One helps the other. And so I've been able to expand my reach, my circle of influence, in essence, to do more for veterans, for currently serving and their families.
Outstanding. It's an incredible organization, ladies and gentlemen. You can see it behind him. Operation Red Wing Foundation. This is how you get a hold of him. We'll go into that more later. Spike, you're talking an awful lot about one team, one mission. What's that mean to you?
Well, first of all, it was a good friend of mine who recently passed, former Marine Larry Schmidt. He is the one that came up with the phrase. For my rodeo committee, I'm a chairman of the Armed Forces Appreciation Committee for the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo. I would say one team, one fight. So anybody who served, who's deployed overseas, knows the phrase. But I kept telling myself, that's one team, one fight. I get it, but for us, we're in a civilian atmosphere here. And so he came to me one day after the meeting, he goes, Spike, instead of that, what about one team, one mission? I'm like, Larry, that's it. That's it. And I always give credit to him, because he's the one who coined that phrase. And when it goes back to it's no different than what I do now, as far as with the VSO, and actually you can apply to every aspect of your life. If you focus on the mission, then we as a team, because any person who has success is not doing it on their own.
Right.
It is a team effort. And if we always focus on what the mission is and we work together, then we're going to be successful. And so that one team, one mission is a way to remind people about why are we here? When I'm volunteering in the veteran space, it's not just enough to do the right thing, but it's to do it for the right reasons, the intentions. And for me, if you don't check all those boxes, if there's something that you're trying to get at it for yourself as far as a personal gain, then, to me, then you're not here for the mission. It should always be about helping others, in whatever aspect that is that honoring them? Is it, they need financial assistance, they need food assistance, they need resources. If they need help with mental health, as what we do with Operation Red Wings Foundation, then that is what we should be focused on, is how do we help our brothers and sisters? And we don't know what help they need until we talk to them and then they share that.
Exactly. It's such an incredible thing. Now, the Houston, I always got to read their name because I always get it wrong. The Houston Region Veteran Chamber of Commerce, the leadership told me point blank, wasn't for Spike, we don't exist. What did you do?
Well, I think that's not a true statement in my opinion, but in essence, what I did was I was brought on initially as one of the original team prior to us launching in April 2 years ago. But as the being on the board of directors, my job, as I explained to them, is the board, what they're supposed to be doing is provide the oversight to, talk about the strategic level. And then from there, between your president, your vice president, in that team. Then they look at the tactical as far as decide how that's implemented and work with the day-to-day issues. And for me, I always look and try to, going back to project manager days, manage the scope creep. So again, going back and talking about, here is our mission. And whenever there was an idea being pitched as far as, okay, we want to do this, this, and this, I'm like, that's great. Now let's talk about what our mission is. Does that, and then go, now we'll go through those questions like, does that actually fit our mission? Well, not necessarily. Okay, so that, are we going to expand our mission, or are we going to stay with our mission? So that's what I've tried to do, is provide that oversight and give the guidance. And then not only that, but not just say yes or no, but go through a series of questions so that next time that they're asking those questions. And that's what you're trying to do. I always say, from when I was in the military or any leadership role, especially in the volunteer space, is you should be training yourself out of a job. I mean, when I was active duty, that's what I would teach my, I had 7 shops in there were supervisors. There was approximately 100 airmen. I'll tell them, you should be training yourself out of a job. So the worst thing you can ever say is, I, missed a day of work and things cratered. Well, then that means that you failed as a leader. You failed in your management. So that is what I'm trying to teach them, is here are a series of questions you should be asking yourself, and then determining, is this within our mission? And they have done a great job in doing that. And so that there's less of that scope creep that gets to my level that, I'm managing. But yes, that's, and again, it goes back to educating them, because I have more experience than they do as far as sitting on boards, et cetera. But that's why they brought me in, is because of that experience. Now, I'm very humbled by that and grateful for the opportunity.
They're quite a group. In fact, for the audience out there, had it not been for Spike, Dave Weaver, John Cockley, this book would have never happened, because they stepped right up and said, yes, this fits our mission, and here's a way to get out our story. So I'm eternally grateful to them. Spike, we're just about out of time here. What last message you want to leave with the viewers around the world here?
Well, I would say this, for what I do as far as my day job, I am with Operation Red Wings Foundation. And what we do is we provide post-traumatic growth programs for veterans currently serving their families. We have multiple items that we cover as far as different programs. Veteran program, a spouse, a couple, and then again with the school-age children. So regardless of where they are in the country, they're suffering from the symptoms of post-traumatic stress, mild traumatic brain injury, chronic pain. They're eligible for our programs. Mm-hmm. We will fly them into one of our 2 locations, one in Texas, one in Fayetteville, North Carolina, and they will get some of the best modalities out there. And we provide a holistic approach. Again, as we talked about, we are different once we've gone to combat. We're not training them to forget. What we're doing is we're teaching them how to deal with the symptoms they have, and then how to address it and live and be functional. And we do that all at no cost. So for me, is what I'm, my mission now is to help veterans and their families who are suffering from those symptoms, that if they need help, we're here for them to provide that. And again, it's a 6-day in-person program, and we do that at no cost, which to me is what I do now, is to help veterans. Regardless, I get phone calls for so many, different resources they're looking for, and I always answer my phone. I'm always, helping, and if I don't know the answer, then there's somebody that I do know, and then we can find the resources that veteran may need or the family may need. So to me, it's always giving back, not only to your community, but to your country. And that's what we did when we wore the uniform, was we're serving. And now I'm able to continue to serve. And I'm grateful for that, because my country's given me so much.
Absolutely. What a story. John Cacalis, who's the vice president of the Houston Chamber, he said, your service doesn't end with your DD 214 discharge papers.
That is correct.
It's an absolute lifetime. Wow. Well, we're just about out of time, Spike. Thank you so much for giving these people proof that the people who work behind the scenes to connect people and find solutions, those are the people who have the influence, and those are the people who have the real power. So again, thank you so much. See Spike's story. Several other veterans, military parents, children, supporters. Get the book, Business Secrets from the Battlefield to the Boardroom. It's available on Amazon. You can get it in Kindle, you can get it in printed form. Get the book. You need to read these stories. You can see this show on Roku TV, or you can see it on my YouTube channel, which is also known Frank Zaccari. I keep it very simple. We'll send the links to Spike, and he'll post it in all over the places that Spike puts his information. If you use the YouTube and you see it there, please subscribe. Let me leave you with this, as we do every week. None of us are in this alone. And the secret to walking on water is to know where the rocks are. And today, Spike showed us where many, many of those rocks are. Join us next week for another life-altering event. Spike, again, thank you so much.
I appreciate it, Frank, and thanks for the opportunity.